Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Sean, and today we are talking about card games. So we got 5 new card games we're going to be chatting about. They are all from 2024, and we're very excited to talk about them.
We're going to be talking about Bus and Stop, Backstories, Tranquility The Ascent, Buffer Time, and Superteam Rivals. And the 3 in the middle were provided for a review, and the other 2 we got with our own money. So let's get right to it.
So we are going to start with Bus and Stop, which is designed by Sashi, and this is, you don't even have to wait to the end of this. This is one of my favorite games of the year. I've made so many people play this game. I picked it up at Essen. I was making people play it all the time in Essen. I've made so many more people, well, not made. I've brought this into so many lives. And what this is you're a bus driver. So it's gonna start out, you got 5 cards in the middle. They're waiting at the bus stop. You've all got kind of an imaginary bus. That can fit 10 cards. Each turn, you're taking cards. You just have to take all of one color. You don't have a choice. If there's 3 blue cards, you got to take all those blue cards. Or you can deliver passengers. So you're trying to save up these cards, trying to save up like a group of businessmen or a group of book ladies. And then you're going to trade those for these scoring cards. But whenever someone trades those, if you've got one of those on your bus that you're not sure that you want, you can say skedaddle, which is one of the funnest parts of the game. And then you can flip that over into like this little pile of single cards. That's pretty much what the game is. And it is just, it's one of these super clever card games. It's like, why doesn't this exist already?
Yeah, I really like how it replicates real life too, because if you see another bus and the group of people get off, you can just skedaddle them off of your bus.
Go with those people, yeah.
But it is a bit of a push your luck as well, because you get more points if your sets are higher as well. So you're really motivated to collect as many businessmen as you can. However, your bus is getting more and more full. So at some point you are going to have to trade them in, and it's so tough when you have like 6 instead of 7 of something.
Yeah, it really is, and it's this interesting kind of strategic, and there's more strategy than you'd expect with this game about like when to skedaddle to free up one spot, even though maybe I kind of want that one for a set, but if I free up that spot, maybe I'm going to get something else. Or being able to take old people, because there's old people as well, but they only ride your bus for one stop, so they never really stay on the bus, so they're just like free points. But they're only 1 point at a time. And the game ends way quicker than you expect every time, because it's when it gets down to 6 scoring cards or when the deck runs out. And when people are kind of taking their time to try and make their perfect scoring cards, you run out of the deck and you're like, oh no, I didn't score nearly enough. And yeah, that timer, I feel like it's just set perfectly too.
Yeah, you always want there to be more turns, and you're definitely keeping an eye on what everybody else is collecting for a couple of reasons. One, it's going to be harder if other people are collecting the same set as you, because you'll both be gunning for the same type of like people who are riding your bus. But also, you might be motivated just to take one card that's that card that they want. And it's actually not too much of a bad thing, because at some point they will trade in that set and you can just skedaddle that one that you collected along the way.
I love that it says skedaddle. It's so much fun to say. And everyone has, like I've played this with 20 some people now, and everyone has been delighted to say skedaddle. And this is the first Sashi and Sashi game that we've played, and I've always heard such good things about like Wind the Camera and Come Sail Away, I think it's called, or Come Sail With Me, I'm not sure. But I really want to go and track those, and I feel like I've missed the bus on those, but not on this one.
It is one of those games that's really simple to explain, enough strategy, and looks lovely too. I really like the art style.
Yeah, this goes right on that shelf with like Parade and Scout and Sea Salt and Paper, like just a really clever but simple card game. Absolutely love it. So let's move on to the next one.
The next one is Backstory, specifically Alone Under the Ice, and this is kind of meant to emulate a point-and-click computer game. So at the very beginning, you have a panorama, you've got a character, and then you've got a couple of cards. And those cards have little cutouts in them, and what you do is you are trying to use those cutout cards on the panorama to get more information, get more cards, solve a mystery, and move throughout the story step by step, but it's going to change depending on the decisions you make.
Yeah, and those cards, it's interesting because it's stuff like one of them will say like, look at the room, and one of them will say like, chit chat with the people in the room. And when you put it on the back, it's just got this little window that focuses on one part of that card. So you only get one bit of information, but sometimes that information can like lock out other information, and sometimes it can lead to you gaining stuff that you can then use to do other stuff. Or often what happened to us is it gives you some sort of injury. Our person by the end was like somehow frozen and like on fire and tired and injured in like 4 different ways, just hobbling through. But it's very narrative. It's a little bit linear. It still has kind of that feel of an escape room in a box though.
Yeah, and it doesn't use an app, which I like, because using the cutout cards and little notches is how you're able to get your clues. And I think a few more games have been using that, because we saw that recently with Chronologic as well, and it's a really clever system. But I think the first time through, it felt really quick. But I think that is kind of the goal of these as well. It's not going to be like a 2 or 3 hour experience. I think we played through it in about 45 minutes to an hour. It might take you longer if there's more of you and you're having more of a discussion with each of your decisions as well, but don't like expect it to be a 2 to 3 hour experience.
Yeah, and it'll take you less as well if you kind of skim through the text on the card, because there is a good chunk of text. The story's fine though. I didn't have a lot of qualms with that, and I thought it was fairly interesting, but it is a little bit like, I don't know if we could have ended up on a terribly different path. It's just kind of a slightly different path, and then you can get different endings. We got the best ending, just saying, but this one is a 2 out of 5 difficulty, so I feel like other ones in the series are probably going to get a bit more difficult, and I would be more interested in those. But I was interested enough in this that I would definitely try another one.
I would say this isn't my favorite of the escape room in a box type of games, but it could be because it's the first like low level complexity. So I am keen to try more, and it was interesting how they use their cards.
Yeah, and if it's like a fairly cheap and you just want kind of a quick game, you're playing in a hotel room, I don't think you'd go too far wrong with this either. Next up, we're talking about Tranquility The Ascent, and this is designed by James Emerson, and it's the second Tranquility game, and it's finally delivered. There's been a little bit of a rocky road to this one getting to folks, but we're very excited to be able to play it, and this kind of follows along the lines of the first Tranquility. So the first Tranquility, you're building a big old grid of cards, and you've just got to have them go from lowest to highest, and you got to put them in order. This time, you're turning those cards on their side, so you've got diamonds instead of squares, and you're not so much worried about going all the way from the bottom number to the top number, but you're worried about each individual row. So you're building a mountain that's going to work up to a peak, and you got to build from left to right, and you've got to try and get same number cards on each row, and cards can only go as high as their number. So a number 2 can only go on rows 1 or 2. There's also campfires and bridges that are going to change things a little bit, and you've got to make sure to keep one of your summit cards to put right on the top, the cherry on the cake. So you got to hold on to at least one of those. There's only 4 in the game. We have definitely been guilty of getting rid of those early, and you just got to build up that mountain to the top. And it's much like the first one, a really interesting challenge. I think I actually like this one a little bit more than the first one.
Yeah, I do like this one more. I like the art style because each of the cards looks lovely with their little mountain scenery. And if you haven't played either, it is a cooperative game, and you're not supposed to say anything about your cards. So that is really important. I can't be like, oh, I've got a 3, so let me go there. It is just, you're just going to have to play cooperatively and try and figure it out. And it is an interesting puzzle. It's come very, very close. I think we have won most of the time, but if we haven't, or even when we have won, it's been like almost a couple cards left. We have almost lost. And I like that it comes with the mountain goats. And so the mountain goats, it says it's an extra challenge, and there are certain cards that have a mountain goat icon on it, and a mountain goat goes on it. And you can discard a card to move the mountain goats up the mountain, and they have to be like on the second to highest row. And you have to try and get 8 there. But I think it also makes it a little bit easier in some ways, because instead of having to discard 2 cards, you can discard 1 card.
Yeah, because one of the options is if you can't play a card, or if you're not happy with your card, you can discard 2 cards and just take 2 new cards, which is almost never a good idea. And friends, I dislike it so much that friends are scared to do it when we're playing together. It's like, no, Sean will get mad at me. But now you can spend those cards and you're actually doing something useful with them. So it does feel a lot better. And also, I do have to point out, we were playing this wrong at first. So we were winning a bunch. And a guy at the National Theater, we were just playing this in the lobby, came over to us and was like, guys, I think you got to start from the left. And then we looked it up. Yep, you were totally right. And now it is even more of a challenge. But every game we've played has, like you said, come right down to just those cards in our hand, nothing else in our deck, and it's like got to be perfect for those last few cards, and either it is or it isn't.
Yeah, it's a really clever cooperative puzzle, and it looks lovely. The art style is beautiful.
Yeah, and there's also a solo mode we haven't got to play yet. So there's quite a bit in this little box there's also flipping over the bottom things for an extra challenge as well. So there are all these different modules in it. I think it took Tranquility and it just kind of, it built on it.
Yeah, and definitely hang on to those summit cards, because I think it actually comes with 5, and I have been guilty of discarding all 5, resulting in us losing the game. Next up is Star Trek Lower Decks Buffer Time, the card game. And this is a pretty simple push your luck card game. Every round it starts off with this mission, this little assignment that you have to do. And it will have a target value as well as points. And then you flip a card and you take turns flipping cards. And that will either have like the heroes of Lower Decks and will have a number that will go towards the target, or it will have management, and management is bad. It has negative icons. So your goal is to try and reach the target value, but if you get 4 of those management icons, the round is scrapped and you don't get any of the points you collected.
And there's also these little side quests that you can do. So if you're feeling cocky, if you're getting close to whatever that threshold is, you can add extra missions to your mission. And then that ups the value that you've got to reach, but it also ups the points you can get. But also, obviously, there's a little bit more danger in getting those management cards that are going to make you lose the round. There's only 5 rounds to the game. And you win, at least in 2 players, if you get to 18 points, but that point threshold moves up depending on how many players there are.
Yeah, and I will say right off the top, this is very much like a family weight card game. It is really simple. The decisions you're making are pretty straightforward. You're either just flipping a card or you're playing one of those side goals, or there are like a couple of special cards, but it feels a little bit on rails.
Yeah, it does, because a lot of the time your choice really is just flip that card and then just hope it's good or maybe it's bad. This is more the sort of thing that you're going to find like at a Walmart or like that sort of game. There are like 7 different designers on it, even for such a light game. So and it feels like that. This feels like kind of designed by committee to make kind of a mass marketing game. So for like families or like non-gamers, this might kind of scratch that like push your luck itch.
Yeah, and we were really looking forward to it because we really like Lower Decks.
Oh, Lower Decks is great.
And it has the Lower Decks art and it has Lower Decks like quotes, but it doesn't feel like Lower Decks. All it is really is management's bad, Lower Decks characters are good, is like the theme of the game.
Which is in fairness, that is the cartoon.
That is true, but I was kind of hoping it would tap into the universe a little bit more.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is just a very, very quick, I'm sure very inexpensive card game that, does what it says. This is a push or luck card game, super fast. You can play this with kids. Kids would be very into this, I think. It's just know that this is really, it's a simple push or luck game. So if that's what you're looking for, that's what it does. And the last one that we wanted to talk about is Super Club Rivals. And this is like a card game plus. This is a real fancy card game. This comes from a Kickstarter and it is also the follow-up to Super Club. But this one makes that game a little bit simpler. It's like a football or soccer, if you're in North America, manager game. So you're running a club, you're just setting up your teams, and then you're going head to head. And from what I've heard, I haven't played the original, but the original is quite a big system where you're doing all these different things. This kind of simplifies it a bit and just makes it into a 2-player game.
The heart of the game is you have your whole team to choose from, and you only have 11 spots to put them. So you have this great screen, and you have to slide your players into the different positions. And in the meantime, your opponent is doing the same thing. And then you both reveal your teams, and you compare. So I would compare my offense against your defense. You would compare your offense against my defense, and then we would compare the midfielders. And for each of those, we see who wins, and if someone wins more than the other, they win the game.
And the whole thing is, it's kind of a series. I think it's meant to replicate like a season. If you win so many more games than the other person, you win. And you're just trying to get down to like your little stadium thing at the bottom. This is really kind of a simplification, but it is kind of just setting up that lineup and then comparing it to each other. But within that, there's a whole bunch of different stuff you can do. So there's like transfer windows, there's bidding on different players that you can get. You can train players in it, you can gain different staff members, but they do all of this through like a fairly, like how the system works is pretty simple. But there's kind of more depth than I expected.
Yeah, it is a good system once you get your head around it. I will say we did struggle with the rule book.
Yeah.
It took a while to understand it, and you had even played it before because you got a demo in at Essen.
I think I would have had a heck of a time learning it from the rule book if I hadn't been actually taught by the designer, who's an incredibly nice guy, and I had a lot of fun playing with him, which is why I'd never heard about this. And I just sat down to play the game because it happened to be open at that time. He was super lovely, did a great job teaching me, and I really, really enjoyed it, so I went and picked up the game. But reading the rule book, it's a little bit trickier from that rule book. It's not the best rule book, so if you can find a video that will teach you the game, it's a fairly simple game, but there's a lot in there. And I'm not a football fan. I'm a sports fan. I enjoy an awful lot of sports. I played a lot of hockey manager games when I was growing up and always loved them. And so I get into that anyway. But you really feel like all those little bits of football, you can tell that they love it.
Yeah, it is really fun to make your team and to try and meta game it as well. Because like I'll play against Sean and he'll have like only 2 midfielders and a really strong like offense and defense. So I'll be like, oh, okay, well, what I want to do then is I'll make sure to win midfield, but I probably only need like 3 players and then try and win the other one. But you would have like switched everything up the next game. So I really am trying to read you, but you're moving your players about. And every time you compare, you're also rolling a dice. So you might pull out like an unexpected win. And the other thing that could happen is you might end up with an injury.
Yeah, and that's cool too, because with those injuries, then it's for like a certain number of games, and so you put them under the stack of games. It's the same thing you can do with training as well, where you can train someone by like sending them down to another league on loan but for so many games, and then they come back stronger. And that's really cool too. And also the teams, there's 4 different teams that come in the box, and they all have slightly different strengths based on like their starting players, who they come with. There's one team that's got a lot more that can level up. There's one team that gets more money. And I like that part of it too.
Yeah, you really get connected with the players too. I think one of your favorite bits as well is when you train them and you get the higher level. It's the same art, but they look different and older.
Yeah.
So I love how they kept that. They're like, okay, it is the same player, but now they're like a more experienced player, so they look different.
Their face is the same, but now they've got like tattoos and jewelry and like slightly different, like cooler hair and stuff. I really like that a lot. And a lot of the players are just fun to look at as well. It's too bad that rulebook can be a little bit of a hurdle for new players, but once you get past that, I think there's a lot going on with this one, and this was just a huge surprise for me.
Yeah, I think this is a really clever head-to-head card game. So if you like 2-player games, even if you're not that into football, I think you could get into this.
And that is it. That is 5 new card games for 2024, and there's a few in there we really liked, especially Bus and Stop. I cannot go on enough about Bus and Stop, as Jess well knows.
Thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comments your favorite card games you've played this year. And as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.